Morgan Hayes had always been a ghost in Pine Creek, Montana, and that was precisely how she preferred it. The small town nestled between vast mountain ranges and whispering forests where everyone traded secrets except about her. For 7 years, she'd worked at Pine Creek Medical Center with hands that moved with the precision of someone who'd treated wounds far worse than anything a logging accident or barfight could produce. Each morning before sunrise, locals noticed the same ritual, Morgan running 5 exact miles along the perimeter of town, her breath visible in the mountain air, moving with a calculated efficiency that seemed almost mechanical. They called it Morgan's meditation, never suspecting how close to combat readiness those movements truly were. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Morgan was 36 but carried herself with a disciplined composure that suggested military training. Her auburn hair was always secured in a tight bun, and her hazel eyes held a vigilance that made patients think twice before complaining about their minor ailments. She wore the same uniform every shift, crisp navy scrubs with spotless white shoes, a stethoscope around her neck, and a slender silver bracelet that never left her wrist, engraved with coordinates no one in town recognized. A thin, jagged scar ran along her jawline, barely noticeable but unmistakably there, the kind that comes from something sharper than a household accident. The townspeople had theories, naturally. Some whispered she'd escaped a violent relationship. Others suggested witness protection. Dr. Wilson, the elderly physician who'd hired her, maintained she was simply running from big city burnout. But Morgan answered only direct questions, maintaining an impenetrable barrier on her personal life that clearly stated, "Disclose and no further." What the residents of Pine Creek didn't know was what Morgan kept hidden in the renovated cabin. 10 miles outside town, isolated by dense forest and a private access road. Behind reinforced walls and beneath a specially constructed cellar lay an operational field medical unit, a compact trauma center with military-grade equipment that didn't appear in any civilian medical catalog. Morgan had spent years assembling, acquiring supplies through channels no ordinary nurse should have access to, preparing for a contingency she prayed would never arrive. Inside a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards lay a set of dog tags, several encrypted satellite phones, and a military ID bearing the name Captain Morgan Hayes, Special Operations Combat Medical Specialist, U.S. Army Rangers. The ID showed authorization codes that granted access to facilities most Americans didn't know existed. Inside the same compartment was a single photograph, Morgan in desert camouflage standing with 7 other soldiers, their faces dusty but determined, the mountains of Afghanistan rising behind them. On quiet Sunday evenings when her shift ended and the town settled into its weekend rhythm, Morgan would open this compartment, fingers tracing the embossed eagle on her old ID card. In those private moments, the careful facade she maintained would briefly slip. In the silence of her cabin, she wasn't Morgan Hayes, the reliable nurse from Pine Creek Medical Center. She was Phoenix, the combat medic whose hands had saved dozens of operatives under impossible conditions, until the day everything went catastrophically wrong. On this particular Monday, a cold front descended over Pine Creek, bringing with it not just weather, but something that would shatter the careful life Morgan had constructed. She was checking inventory in the hospital supply room when her phone vibrated with an alert from the motion sensors surrounding her property. The footage showed a military transport helicopter landing in the clearing near her cabin, 4 soldiers in unmarked tactical gear securing the perimeter. Morgan's pulse remained steady even as her mind cataloged escape routes and contingency plans. She finished her inventory count, calmly informed the charge nurse she had a family emergency, and walked, never ran, to her Jeep in the hospital parking lot. The drive home took 18 minutes, during which she activated and encrypted Channel on a phone hidden beneath her driver's seat. Perimeter breach at primary location, she reported. Voice clinical and detached. 4 operatives, 1 CH-47 Chinook, unmarked but military configuration. Requesting background on current operations in Montana sector. The response came immediately. No authorized operations in your sector, Phoenix. Maintain distance and observe. Support is being coordinated. As Morgan approached her cabin, she parked a quarter-mile away, retrieving a compact pair of binoculars from her glove compartment. The helicopter was gone, but the 4-person team remained, establishing what appeared to be a surveillance position around her property. Their movements were disciplined, coordinated, not local law enforcement or federal agents, but special operations personnel, the kind she once served alongside. Morgan circled through the forest, approaching from the blind spot she deliberately created in her own security system. The soldiers had positioned themselves with professional precision, but they hadn't anticipated someone who knew exactly how such teams operated. She moved silently, using the terrain as concealment until she was close enough to identify the unit patches, partially covered on their tactical vests. Her blood went cold. These weren't regular military, they were from the 5th Special Forces Group, her old unit. "You might as well come out, Phoenix," a voice called from the tree line. "Your breathing patterns always gave you away in stealth." Exercises. Morgan's hand moved to the hunting knife concealed at her ankle, but she didn't draw it. That voice belonged to someone she'd known in another life. She stepped into the clearing, maintaining tactical distance from the speaker. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Major Ethan Blackwood stood before her, his face weathered by additional years of combat. Since she'd last seen him, he'd been her commanding officer during 3 deployments, the man who'd recruited her from medical school into a program that officially didn't exist. "You've been hard to find," Blackwood said, his tone conversational, as though they were meeting for coffee instead of a covert confrontation in the Montana wilderness. "That was the point," Morgan replied, her posture balanced, ready to move in any direction. "I'm a civilian now, Major. Have been for 5 years. Blackwood smiled slightly. "We both know that's not how it works with people like us, Hayes." He gestured toward her cabin. "Nice setup, remote, defensible, multiple escape routes. You always were meticulous in your planning. What do you want?" Morgan asked, calculating the distance to her hidden weapons cache beneath the woodpile. To her left. "We're not here to bring you in," Blackwood said, reading her tension. "If that was the objective, we wouldn't have been so obvious about our arrival. Then why are you here?" Blackwood's expression hardened. "Operation Ares has been compromised." The code name hit Morgan like physical impact, but her face revealed nothing. Operation Ares had been the classified mission that ended her military career, a cross-border extraction that went catastrophically wrong, resulting in casualties that still haunted her dreams. She'd been the only medical officer on a team, tasked with recovering a high-value intelligence asset from a terrorist compound. The mission had gone sideways when they discovered the compound was actually a biological weapons research facility. "Operation Ares was terminated 5 years ago," Morgan said carefully, "along with everyone involved." "Not everyone," Blackwood countered. "The biological samples you recovered before the extraction, they were never destroyed as you were told. The program continued under deeper classification." Morgan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Montana air. During the extraction, she'd secured tissue samples and research documents from scientists developing a weaponized hemorrhagic fever, something engineered to combine lethality with unprecedented transmission rates. She'd believed those samples had been destroyed after study by USAMRIAD, the Army's Infectious Disease Research Institute. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. 2 days ago, our research facility at Fort Harrison, just outside, Helena was infiltrated. The samples were taken, along with the development work that's happened since your extraction. Blackwood's voice dropped. The people who took them were former members of our unit. People who knew about Phoenix and what you found. Morgan's mind raced through implications. Fort Harrison was less than 200 miles from Pine Creek, practically. In her backyard by military operational standards. Not a coincidence. I'm not military anymore, she said firmly. Whatever's happening, there are active teams who can handle it. Blackwood stepped closer. The people who took the samples have gone dark, using protocols you helped develop actually. They're ghosts now, just like you've been. But there's more. We have intelligence suggesting they're planning to release the weaponized strain. The delivery mechanism appears to be targeting military installations first, then civilian population centers. Why come to me? I was a combat medic, not counterterrorism. Because you're the only one who saw the original research. You treated patient 0 in the field before we extracted. Your immunological profile was used to develop the countermeasures. Blackwood handed her a secure tablet. And because this was left at the scene, the tablet showed security footage from the laboratory breach. As the masked figures efficiently secured the biological materials, one turned directly to the camera and held up a handwritten sign. Only Phoenix rises from these ashes. Morgan's careful composure finally cracked. Rodriguez, she whispered. That's Lieutenant Ana Rodriguez. Blackwood nodded grimly. You're second in command from the medical unit. Officially killed during the extraction. I identified her body myself, Morgan insisted. You identified what you were meant to identify, Blackwood corrected. Rodriguez survived and was recruited into a splinter program, one even I didn't have clearance to know about until this breach. She's been operating off books for 5 years, and now she's gone rogue with the deadliest biological agent we've ever encountered. Morgan handed the tablet back, her mind already shifting to the tactical challenges. What exactly do you expect me to do? I've been out of the game a long time. Rodriguez is using your old protocols, your old thinking patterns. We need you to predict her next move. Blackwood paused. And we need your blood. The countermeasure was developed using your antibodies after your exposure during the extraction. You're the template for the vaccine. The pieces assembled in Morgan's mind with cold precision. Her mysterious recruitment from medical school. Her specialized training. Beyond standard combat medicine. The inexplicable fever she'd developed after the Operation Ares extraction that had nearly killed her, followed by her sudden honorable discharge and relocation program. I wasn't randomly selected for that mission, she stated, the realization dawning. You knew about the bioweapons research before we went in. Blackwood's silence was confirmation enough. You used me as a test subject, Morgan continued, anger finally penetrating her controlled demeanor. You needed someone with advanced medical training who could secure the samples and someone whose immune response could be studied if they were exposed. I was never just a medic on that team. I was the canary in the coal mine. The program wasn't my design, Blackwood said quietly. But yes, your selection was deliberate. Your unique medical background, your exceptional physical conditioning, your psychological profile. You were ideal for both securing the materials and potentially surviving exposure. Morgan turned away, looking toward the mountains. For 5 years, she'd believed she was hiding from a past that had been too painful to confront. Now she understood she'd never really escaped. She'd just been placed in storage, a living repository of antibodies against a weapon she'd helped recover. Rodriguez knows where I am, she said finally. This isn't a coincidence. She wanted you to find me first, to bring me back into the fold. Blackwood nodded. That's our assessment as well. She's playing a longer game. The question is why. Morgan walked to her cabin, Blackwood following at a respectful distance. Inside, she moved directly to the hidden compartment, retrieving the photograph of her old unit. She pointed to Rodriguez, a compact woman with intense eyes and a half-smile. Aina was brilliant, specialized in epidemiology before joining the service. She had theories about weaponizing medical treatments, turning vaccines into targeted delivery systems that could be programmed to affect specific genetic markers. Morgan looked up at Blackwood. Theories that were shut down as unethical. Until Operation Ares provided the perfect testing ground, Blackwood finished. Away from oversight committees and ethical review boards. She's not trying to start a pandemic, Morgan said with sudden certainty. That's too crude for Aina. She wants the countermeasure, my blood, the antibodies you develop from it. The bioweapon is just leverage. Blackwood's communication device buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. We've got movement. Satellite tracking shows a convoy approaching Fort Harrison from multiple directions. Non-military vehicles, but moving with tactical precision. That's not Rodriguez's endgame, Morgan insisted. It's a diversion. Maybe so, but we can't ignore a direct approach on a military installation. Blackwood turned to his team, issuing rapid orders to mobilize additional forces. As they moved, with practiced efficiency, he turned back to Morgan. We need you on this, Phoenix. Whatever Rodriguez is planning, you're the key. Morgan Hayes, the quiet nurse who had built a life defined by routine and invisibility, felt the weight of her former identity settling back onto her shoulders. Phoenix had been buried for 5 years, but never truly gone. I'll need access to the current research, she said, professional detachment replacing her earlier anger. Everything you've developed since the original extraction. And I want the truth about what happened to the rest of my team. Blackwood hesitated only briefly. Agreed. Transport is standing by. As Morgan packed essential supplies, her mind calculated variables and contingencies. The cabin had served its purpose as a hiding place, but that life was over now. Whatever Rodriguez had planned, it would require every bit of Phoenix's training to counter. Blackwood watched her preparations with the assessment of someone who recognized a valuable asset returning to operational status. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I argued against using you as a test subject. Said we should tell you the full parameters of the mission. Morgan secured her medical kit, the movements precise and economical. Would it have made a difference? Would I have refused the mission? No, Blackwood admitted. That's why they selected you. Your psychological profile indicated you'd proceed regardless of personal risk, if you believed the mission objective would save lives. Morgan shouldered her pack, containing the essential equipment and personal items she would need. The rest, the life she had carefully constructed in Pine Creek, would remain behind, perhaps permanently. What's the status of the nearest countermeasure supplies? She asked, fully transitioning to operational mode. Primary storage is at Fort Harrison itself. Secondary supply at our temporary command center outside Helena. We've initiated protocol firebreak, distributing doses to critical personnel, and establishing containment zones around potential targets. Blackwood checked his tactical display. If Rodriguez's team breaches Fort Harrison's biocontainment, we have approximately 48 hours before civilian exposure becomes uncontainable. As they exited the cabin, Morgan took one final look at the life she was leaving behind. The predictable shifts at Pine Creek Medical Center. The quiet evenings. On her porch. The carefully maintained distance from anyone who might become too curious about her past. All of it constructed as a waiting room. A place to exist until either her past found her or she convinced herself it never would. The team is assembled. At the primary landing zone, Blackwood informed her. Once we're airborne, you'll be briefed on everything we know about Rodriguez's movements since her disappearance. Morgan nodded, already processing tactical scenarios. She'll have anticipated conventional containment protocols. If I were planning this operation, I'd target the countermeasure supplies first. Create panic, then use the chaos as cover for the actual objective. Blackwood's communication device signaled again. He listened intently, his expression shifting from concern to alarm. Fort Harrison is under attack, multiple points of entry. They've bypassed primary security using valid credentials and are converging on the bio-containment wing. Morgan checked her watch, standard military timepiece, the one piece of her former life she'd never discarded. Too fast, too direct. This isn't Rodriguez's style. She's creating a distraction. Distraction or not, we can't ignore a direct assault on a military installation housing biological weapons. Blackwood gestured toward the waiting helicopter. We move now. As they approached the aircraft, Morgan felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that preceded combat operations. 5 years of careful anonymity had ended in less than an hour. Phoenix was operational again, stepping back into a world where split-second decisions determined who lived and who died. What Rodriguez didn't know, what no one except Morgan herself knew, was that she hadn't spent the last 5 years simply hiding. She'd been preparing. The combat medic who'd left the service had continued studying, training, analyzing threat patterns and response protocols. The quiet nurse from Pine Creek had maintained her operational readiness while developing skills that hadn't been part of her military training. If Rodriguez wanted Phoenix, she would find that the bird that rose from these ashes was far deadlier than the one that had burned. As the helicopter lifted off, banking toward Fort Harrison, Morgan mentally transitioned fully to her operational persona. Phoenix assessed the tactical situation with clinical detachment, a rogue special forces operator with access to a weaponized pathogen, apparently targeting her specifically, using a military installation as a diversion. The question wasn't whether she could stop Rodriguez. The question was whether Rodriguez had orchestrated this entire scenario precisely because she needed Phoenix to try. The Black Hawk helicopter cut through the Montana sky with military precision, the mountains below resembling tactical terrain. Maps Morgan had memorized years ago. Inside, Blackwood briefed her on the developing situation, his voice competing with the rotor noise. Fort Harrison houses our Biodefense Research Division under the cover of standard military medical training. Most personnel have no idea what's in the Level 4 containment area. He handed her a secure tablet. This is everything we have on Rodriguez since Operation Ares. Morgan reviewed the file with practiced efficiency. After being declared KIA, Aina Rodriguez had apparently been recruited into a classified program codenamed Erebus, a black-budget research initiative studying biological agents as targeted weapons. Her expertise in epidemiology had made her invaluable until she disappeared 3 months ago, taking critical research data with her. She staged her own extraction, Morgan observed, noting the precision with which Rodriguez had vanished. This wasn't impulsive. She's been planning this for years. That's our assessment, Blackwood confirmed. What we don't understand is why now, and why target you specifically. Morgan's mind worked through the problem methodically. The research must have reached a critical stage. Something changed. The communications specialist interrupted, extending a secure headset to Blackwood. Sir, Fort Harrison Command reports the attackers have breached the containment wing. They're requesting emergency protocol authorization. Blackwood took the headset, listening intently before issuing rapid orders. Denied. Tell them to maintain containment protocols, but hold off on failsafe until our arrival. He turned to Morgan. They want to initiate facility sterilization. Scorched earth, Morgan translated. It would destroy the samples and potentially kill everyone inside, including the attackers, and eliminate our chance to recover the agent and countermeasure research, Blackwood added grimly. Morgan processed this with the detachment of someone accustomed to calculating impossible variables. If Rodriguez wanted maximum casualties, she'd have released the agent in a major population center, not a secured military facility. There's something specific at Fort Harrison she needs. The tactical officer monitoring perimeter security looked up from his display. "Sir, we're picking up unusual movement patterns around Pine Creek. Multiple vehicles converging on the medical center." Morgan felt the first genuine surge of alarm. "That's your secondary team. The hospital has no security, minimal protocols for infectious disease containment. Why target a small-town medical center?" Blackwood questioned. "Because that's where I've worked for 5 years," Morgan replied, her mind racing ahead. "Rodriguez knows my routines, my contacts. The hospital keeps blood samples from all staff for emergency typing. Standard protocol I implemented myself." Blackwood understood immediately. "She's after your blood samples. A backup in case she can't secure you directly. Divert half your team to Pine Creek," Morgan instructed, the combat medic fully displacing the small-town nurse. "The rest of us continue to Fort Harrison. Rodriguez will be expecting a split response. She's creating multiple pressure points to stretch our resources." Blackwood issued the necessary orders, the helicopter adjusting course to drop a tactical team near Pine Creek before continuing toward Fort Harrison. As they approached the military installation, the scale of the assault became apparent. Multiple breach points, precision coordination, and what appeared to be inside assistance. "Rodriguez recruited from within," Morgan observed, watching the tactical display. "She has allies still active in the program. The question is how many," Blackwood agreed. "We've lost communication with the containment wing. Last report indicated the attackers were accessing the central sample storage." The helicopter touched down in a designated secure area, and Morgan moved with practiced efficiency, accepting the tactical gear Blackwood's team provided. The familiar weight of a sidearm at her hip felt like reconnecting with a part of herself she'd kept locked away. "Remember, we need Rodriguez alive," Blackwood instructed as they approached the facility. "She's the only one who knows where the original samples might be and what modifications she's made." Morgan checked her equipment one final time. If she follows standard infiltration protocols, she'll have established a secure exfiltration route through the maintenance tunnels. That's where we'll find her. The team moved through the facility with tactical precision, encountering signs of conflict, security personnel subdued but not killed, electronic systems disabled rather than destroyed. Surgical precision, minimizing casualties. "She's being careful," Morgan observed. "These aren't terrorists. They're operating like we would." "Former special forces," Blackwood confirmed. "Recruited from the same programs you and Rodriguez came through." As they approached the containment wing, the facility's emergency systems activated, hermetic seals engaging, decontamination protocols initiating automatically. Morgan recognized the significance immediately. The containment breach is real. They've opened one of the sample containers. Blackwood signaled for the team to don their biological protection gear, specialized equipment designed to shield against precisely the agent they were pursuing. Morgan moved with automatic efficiency, her mind already calculating exposure vectors and containment strategies. "This changes our approach," she stated, checking her mask seal. "We're no longer just pursuing hostiles, we're containing a potential outbreak. Protocol would be to seal and sterilize this entire section," Blackwood noted, the implication clear in his tone. "And if we do that, Rodriguez gets exactly what she wants, destruction of the original samples and research, leaving her with the only viable specimens." Morgan shook her head. "That's why she triggered a containment breach. She's forcing our response." They entered the containment wing through a secondary access point, bypassing the main security checkpoints where Rodriguez's team would have established control. The laboratory spaces showed signs of methodical searching. Drawers opened, storage units accessed, computer terminals still active with partial downloads in progress. "They're copying the research data," Morgan observed, scanning the room with a tactician's eye. "But where's the biological material?" A monitoring alarm activated on Blackwood's tactical display. We've got movement in sublevel 3, the secure cold storage facility. Multiple heat signatures converging. Morgan assessed the facility layout in her mind. That's not right. If they already accessed the samples in the main lab, why move to cold storage? Unless understanding dawned with chilling clarity. The samples in the main lab were decoys. The real agent is in cold storage, along with the original countermeasure supplies, Blackwood added, already redirecting their approach. They moved through the facility with increased urgency, encountering the first armed resistance near the access point to sublevel 3. The attackers wore the same biological protection gear as Blackwood's team, their tactics revealing specialized training. Former Rangers, Blackwood identified as they took cover from precise suppressive fire. Rodriguez recruited from top-tier units. Morgan analyzed the tactical situation, identifying the pattern in their opponent's movement. They're not trying to stop us, they're delaying us. Standard containment protocol. Rodriguez is already below. Using techniques she'd learned in the same program as their opponents, Morgan identified a maintenance access point that would bypass the main confrontation. She signaled to Blackwood, who divided the team, half maintaining engagement with the hostile force while Morgan led the remainder through the alternative route. The cold storage facility was a reinforced vault designed to maintain biological samples at precise temperatures. As Morgan's team approached, they detected a single heat signature inside, someone moving with deliberate purpose among the storage units. Morgan signaled for the team to hold position while she advanced alone. Through the reinforced glass viewing panel, she could see a figure in full biological protection gear, methodically removing samples from a specialized storage unit. "Aina," Morgan called through the communication system. "I know it's you." The figure paused but didn't turn immediately. When she finally faced the window, Rodriguez removed her protective mask, revealing features Morgan had believed dead for 5 years. Her former second-in-command looked harder, a new scar running along her temple, but her eyes held the same intensity Morgan remembered. "Phoenix," Rodriguez acknowledged, her voice calm. "Right on schedule. I calculated 47 minutes. From initial breach to your arrival. You took 43, still exceeding expectations. What are you doing, Aina?" Morgan asked, maintaining tactical distance while assessing potential approaches. "Completing what we started in Operation Ares." Rodriguez continued securing samples. Her movements efficient. "Did Blackwood tell you the truth yet? About why we were really sent into that compound?" "I know I was selected as a potential carrier for antibody development," Morgan replied, noting the specific samples Rodriguez was taking, not just the bioweapon, but also the countermeasure variants. Rodriguez laughed without humor. "That's only the surface. Operation Ares wasn't about securing a terrorist bioweapon. It was about retrieving our own research that had been stolen. Research I helped develop before I understood its true purpose." She sealed the final sample container, securing it in a specialized transport case. "The hemorrhagic agent wasn't designed as a weapon, Phoenix. It was designed as a delivery system for genetic modifications, targeted genetic therapy that could be deployed through controlled contagion. Imagine treatments for genetic diseases that could spread like a beneficial virus, rewriting damaged DNA. Then why stage this attack? Why risk releasing it?" Morgan maintained her position, aware of Blackwood's team securing the perimeter behind her. "Because they perverted it." Rodriguez's voice hardened. "The program evolved from medical application to biological targeting. They're developing variants that can target specific genetic markers, ethnicity-specific biological agents, weapons that could eliminate certain populations while leaving others untouched." Morgan processed this information against what she knew of the research. "If that's true, destroying the research would be the logical approach. Instead, you're securing samples. Because destruction isn't enough. Rodriguez checked her watch. The same synchronized military timepiece Morgan still wore. The research exists in multiple locations. What I need is leverage and proof to expose the program. A facility alarm activated, indicating a security breach at another location. Rodriguez smiled slightly. Right on time. My team at Pine Creek has secured your blood samples. The final piece. Morgan maintained her composure, though the implications were significant. You're creating a dead man's switch. Insurance that. They won't just eliminate you and bury the evidence. Precisely. Rodriguez moved toward the secondary exit. With your blood samples and the original pathogen, I have everything needed to prove the program's existence and its true purpose. If anything happens to me, the evidence goes public, including the fact that they deliberately exposed one of their own medical officers as a test subject. Morgan could hear Blackwood's team preparing to breach the cold storage facility. Time was running out for a peaceful resolution. What's your endgame, Aina? Even with evidence, who would believe you? Who could you trust with this information? The same people who helped me disappear when I discovered the truth. Rodriguez reached the exit door, pausing with her hand on the release. There are still people within the system fighting against this, Phoenix. People who believe in the original mission, saving lives, not calculating acceptable casualties. Morgan made her decision, activating her communication link to Blackwood. Stand down. I'm going to speak with her alone. Blackwood's response was immediate. Negative, Phoenix. She's secured biological weapons and is attempting to escape. She has my blood samples from Pine Creek, Morgan countered. If your team breaches, she has contingencies in place. Let me talk to her. A tense moment passed before Blackwood reluctantly agreed. 5 minutes. Then we secure the facility regardless of the outcome. Morgan entered the cold storage facility, removing her protective mask once inside the controlled environment. Face to face with Rodriguez for the first time in 5 years, she saw both the familiar determination and a new edge of desperation in her former colleague. You could have contacted me directly, Morgan said. Instead of this elaborate operation, would you have believed me? Rodriguez challenged. Or would you have reported a potential security breach to the proper authorities, who would have eliminated me before I could explain? The question hung between them, honest in its assessment of how they'd both been trained to respond to protocol violations. You're right, Morgan acknowledged. I would have followed procedure. Just like I did when I identified what I thought was your body after the extraction. Rodriguez nodded, something like regret crossing her features. They showed you someone else, another operative who died during a separate mission. By the time I understood what was happening, you'd already been discharged and disappeared into the relocation program. Morgan gestured to the samples Rodriguez had secured. If what you're saying is true, those samples are too dangerous to use as leverage. The risk of accidental release is calculated and controlled, Rodriguez interrupted. The active samples are inert until combined with a catalyst. A catalyst derived from your blood, ironically. Your unique immune response created the template for both the weapon and its countermeasure. The facility communication system activated, Blackwood's voice cutting through their conversation. 3 minutes, Phoenix. Make your decision. Morgan assessed the situation with the clarity that had made her an exceptional operative. If Rodriguez was telling the truth, the program she was exposing represented a fundamental violation of everything Morgan had sworn to protect. If she was lying or misguided, she possessed materials that could cause unprecedented casualties. I need verification, Morgan stated. Not just your word. Rodriguez reached into her tactical vest, retrieving the small data drive. Everything I've discovered is here. Research protocols, test results, target development scenarios. Review it yourself. You have the medical background to understand what they're really creating. Morgan accepted the drive, securing it in her own equipment. This doesn't resolve our immediate situation. Blackwood's team will not let you leave with those samples. I don't need to leave with all of them, Rodriguez replied. Just enough to maintain leverage. The rest can be secured here, under joint supervision by multiple agencies, not just the program that developed them. Morgan's tactical training processed the potential compromise. You want me to negotiate terms. Exposure of the program. In exchange for your safety and controlled handling of the samples. Not just my safety, Rodriguez clarified. Protection for everyone involved in exposing this, including you, once you verify what I've shown you. The facility communication system activated again. 1 minute, Phoenix. Morgan made her decision, activating her own communication link. Major Blackwood, I'm escorting Dr. Rodriguez out with a partial sample set. The remaining materials will stay secured here. We need a direct line to Central Command to discuss terms for peaceful resolution. Blackwood's response was immediate. That's not your call to make, Phoenix. The facility remains under lockdown protocol. Then you risk public exposure of everything this program has been developing, Morgan countered. Rodriguez has established dead man switches. If she doesn't make regular contact with her team, evidence goes to multiple international agencies and media outlets. A tense silence followed before Blackwood responded. Verification code Alpha 7 Delta. Confirm authentication. Morgan recognized the request. Blackwood needed confirmation she wasn't under duress. Authentication confirmed. Sparrow flies at midnight. It was their old recognition phrase from joint operations, something Rodriguez wouldn't know to coerce from her. Understood, Blackwood finally replied. Central access corridor will be cleared. Proceed to command center for negotiation protocols. Morgan turned to Rodriguez, professional detachment masking the turmoil of processing these revelations. We proceed together. Any sign you're misdirecting or manipulating this situation, I will personally ensure you don't leave this facility. Rodriguez nodded, resealing her protective gear. I expected nothing less, Phoenix. That's why I came to you instead of running with what I already had. Some things are too important for personal survival considerations. As they prepared to exit the cold storage facility, Morgan felt the weight of a decision that would have implications far beyond her carefully constructed life in Pine Creek. The nurse who had hidden from her past was stepping directly into a confrontation that would determine not just her future, but potentially the ethical boundaries of biological research for generations to come. The quiet life she'd built had always been temporary, a waiting room rather than a destination. Part of her had always known that Phoenix would rise again when the stakes became high enough. What she hadn't anticipated was finding herself caught between the organization she'd once served and the colleague who had apparently died to expose its darkest secrets. As they moved through the secured corridor toward the command center, Morgan maintained tactical awareness of both Rodriguez and their surroundings. Trust had been the first casualty of her military career, and she wasn't prepared to resurrect it based on a single conversation, no matter how compelling the evidence might seem. The team at Pine Creek, Morgan said quietly as they walked. Did they harm anyone at the hospital? Surgical extraction only, Rodriguez replied. In and out through the laboratory receiving area. Most staff won't even know anything happened until inventory reveals the missing samples. Morgan nodded, a small relief in the midst of cascading complications. Whatever else happened, the people of Pine Creek, her patients, her colleagues, for the past 5 years remained unharmed, untouched by the shadow war that had finally found her. The command center ahead represented a point of no return. Once she entered those doors with Rodriguez, advocating for investigation, rather than elimination, Morgan Hayes would cease to exist entirely. Phoenix would fully re-emerge into a world of classified operations and calculated risks, where the line between ally and enemy often blurred beyond recognition. She checked her watch, synchronized to the same military precision as Rodriguez's, and stepped forward into the Confrontation that would determine whether her skills would save lives or contribute to something monstrous hidden behind classification protocols and national security justifications. Phoenix had been reborn in fire once before. Now she would discover whether that fire had forged her into a weapon or a shield. The Fort Harrison Command Center hummed with controlled chaos as Morgan and Rodriguez entered under armed escort. Tactical teams maintained professional distance, weapons lowered but ready. On wall-mounted displays, security feeds showed containment teams securing the facility while medical personnel prepared decontamination protocols. At the center of the room, behind a reinforced tactical station, stood Colonel Richard Vance, the facility commander whose authorization would be necessary for any negotiation to proceed. Major Blackwood, Vance acknowledged with cold professionalism. "I see you've brought guests to my compromised facility." "Sir," Blackwood replied, "Dr. Rodriguez has critical information regarding Project Erebus. She's requesting protected whistleblower status in exchange for securing the remaining biological samples and providing intelligence on potential program violations." Vance's expression remained impassive, but Morgan noted the slight tension. In his posture, the reaction of someone confronting an unexpected complication rather than standard protocol violation. "Dr. Rodriguez is a fugitive who has stolen classified materials and endangered military personnel," Vance stated flatly. "The proper procedure is detention, followed by intelligence debriefing under controlled conditions." Rodriguez stepped forward, maintained a precise tactical distance from both Vance and the nearest security personnel. "Colonel, I've already established deadman protocols. If I don't make regular contact with my team, evidence regarding Project Erebus will be released to multiple international oversight agencies." "Threats won't improve your situation, Doctor," Vance replied, though Morgan detected the calculated assessment behind his controlled expression. "Not threats," Morgan interjected. "Insurance. Standard protocol for whistleblowers, with actionable intelligence on classified programs that may have exceeded their authorized parameters." Vance's attention shifted to Morgan, his eyes narrowing. "Slightly. Captain Hayes, your involvement is unexpected. Your clearance was revoked upon medical discharge." "And yet here I stand," Morgan replied evenly, "being addressed by my former rank inside a classified facility." Curious how quickly protocols shift when convenience dictates. A tense silence stretched between them before Vance activated the secure communication system. "Clear the room. Essential personnel only." The security teams withdrew to perimeter positions, leaving only Vance, Blackwood, Morgan, and Rodriguez in the central command area. Once the space was secured, Vance's demeanor shifted subtly, the facility commander giving way to something more complex. "What exactly do you believe you know about Erebus?" he asked Rodriguez directly. "Everything," she responded, "including the transition from medical application to genetic targeting, the deliberate exposure protocols, the selection criteria for test subjects." Her eyes flicked briefly toward Morgan. "The calculated casualties." Vance absorbed this information without visible reaction. "And you have proof of these allegations?" "Sufficient to trigger multiple congressional investigations and international sanctions," Rodriguez confirmed. "Starting with the deliberate exposure of Captain Hayes during Operation Ares to test antibody development potential." Morgan maintained her composure, though the confirmation of what she'd suspected sent a cold ripple through her tactical awareness. She'd been selected not just for her medical expertise, but as a human test subject, exposed to a biological agent with unknown long-term effects. "Colonel," Morgan addressed Vance directly, "verification is simple. Grant me temporary clearance reinstatement to review the Erebus files. If Dr. Rodriguez's allegations are unfounded, you've lost nothing. If they're accurate, we have a fundamental ethical breach that requires addressing." Vance studied her with the calculation of someone weighing operational variables rather than moral considerations. And if I refuse? Then you confirm everything she's claiming, Morgan replied. No innocent program requires this level of obfuscation when confronted with specific allegations. Blackwood, who had remained tactically positioned between the parties, finally spoke. Sir, I requested Captain Hayes' assistance based on her unique expertise. If she's being denied access to relevant operational information, I need to understand the justification for my report to Central Command. The strategic pressure was clear. Blackwood was creating an official record of the conversation, one that would require explanation if Vance continued to block investigation. After a measured silence, Vance activated his secure terminal. Temporary. Clearance restoration, Captain Hayes, 12 hours. Supervised access only. Morgan nodded acknowledgement, understanding that the first tactical objective had been achieved. Access would provide verification and leverage for what would come next. Dr. Rodriguez will remain in medical isolation during this review period, Vance continued. The biological materials will be secured under joint protocol, my security. Team and Major Blackwood's personnel. Rodriguez looked to Morgan, a silent question in her expression. Morgan gave an almost imperceptible nod. Acceptance of the terms while maintaining vigilance. Agreed, Rodriguez stated. With one condition. Captain Hayes oversees my medical isolation personally. Given my allegations regarding this facility's ethical standards, I require supervision by someone with both medical expertise and independent operational history. Vance's jaw tightened slightly, the first genuine emotional reaction he'd displayed. You're hardly in position to dictate terms, Doctor. On the contrary, Rodriguez replied calmly. My team has secured additional materials beyond what was taken here. Their instructions are quite specific regarding my safety and treatment. Another tactical silence filled the room before Vance conceded with a curt nod. Captain Hayes will supervise your medical isolation. Major Blackwood will oversee the evidence review and security protocols. He checked his watch with deliberate precision. The 12-hour clock starts now. I suggest you use it efficiently. As the meeting concluded and security personnel returned to escort them to their designated areas, Morgan maintained a professional detachment that had defined her military career. Inwardly, however, her mind processed the tactical situation with accelerating clarity. Vance's reactions had confirmed Rodriguez's allegations more effectively than any documentation could have. The question wasn't whether Erebus had violated ethical boundaries, but how extensively and with whose authorization. The secure review room contained 3 terminal stations with biometric access controls. Morgan's credentials had been provisionally restored, allowing her to access the classified files while Blackwood supervised from a position near the door. You realize we're being monitored, Blackwood stated quietly once they were alone. Morgan nodded without looking up from the terminal. Standard procedure. Though I suspect certain files have been segregated or modified since Rodriguez's departure. Likely, Blackwood agreed, which is why I brought this. He placed a secure data tablet beside her terminal. Direct link to Central Command archives. Bypasses local security protocols. Whatever they're hiding won't be scrubbed from all systems. Morgan glanced at him, reassessing his position in this unfolding scenario. You're not just following orders on this, are you? Blackwood's expression remained professionally neutral. Let's say I've had my own questions about Erebus for some time. Rodriguez's actions provided an opportunity to investigate through official channels. Using me as your tactical entry point, Morgan observed without accusation. Using your unique position as both medical expert and potential victim, Blackwood corrected. If Rodriguez is right, you have more at stake than anyone. Morgan turned her attention to the files, navigating through classification levels with practiced efficiency. The Erebus documentation was extensive. Thousands of pages of research protocols, test results, and development scenarios. She focused on the historical data first, tracing the program's evolution from its origins. What she found confirmed Rodriguez's claims with chilling precision. Erebus had begun as a legitimate medical research initiative, developing targeted treatment delivery systems using modified viral vectors. The breakthrough had come with the discovery that certain hemorrhagic fever variants could be modified to carry genetic alterations without triggering fatal symptoms. The potential applications for treating genetic disorders had been promising. Then came the military application phase. The research shifted from medical treatment to enhancement possibilities, creating soldiers with improved recovery capabilities, resistance to biological weapons, even optimized performance under extreme conditions. This phase had operated under appropriate ethical guidelines, with volunteer test subjects and rigorous safety protocols. The ethical breach had begun 3 years later, when a classified directive changed the program parameters. Morgan found the authorization buried in administrative files, a presidential finding authorizing exploration of defensive capabilities against genetically targeted biological threats. What followed was the systematic development of bioweapons that could target specific genetic markers, weapons designed to affect certain populations while leaving others unharmed. The implications were staggering, not just tactical battlefield advantage, but potential ethnic targeting on a scale previously unimaginable. They needed test subjects, Morgan stated, the pieces aligning with terrible clarity. People with medical expertise who could report symptoms accurately, but who operated under classified conditions where monitoring could be disguised as routine health assessment. Special operations medical personnel, Blackwood confirmed, deployed to environments where exposure could be attributed to field conditions rather than deliberate testing. Morgan found her own file within the research data, extensive medical monitoring disguised as standard post-deployment assessment, blood work, genetic analysis, immune response tracking. Her body had been a laboratory for 5 years, without her knowledge or consent. There were others, she noted, finding a pattern in the personnel assignments. At least 17 medical officers with similar profiles, all exposed during classified operations, all monitored under the guise of routine medical surveillance. How many survived? Blackwood asked quietly. Morgan checked the data with clinical detachment, though each number represented a colleague who had unknowingly served as a test subject. 11 confirmed surviving. 3 listed as deceased from operational casualties. The others. She paused, finding the classification notation, status unknown, removed from active monitoring. Like Rodriguez was supposed to be, Blackwood observed, and potentially like you would have been eventually. Morgan accessed the secure tablet Blackwood had provided, cross-referencing the Erebus files with Central Command archives. The expanded access revealed what the local files had been designed to conceal. Erebus had transitioned from defensive research to offensive capability development. The program had been preparing deployment scenarios for genetically targeted biological agents against specific population groups. This goes beyond ethical violations, Morgan stated, her voice controlled. Despite the implications, this is preparation for biological warfare with ethnic targeting parameters. Explicit violation of international conventions and U.S. law. Blackwood reviewed the evidence, his expression hardening as the scope became clear. We need to secure this data through official channels. Following whistleblower protocols will ensure the evidence remains intact. We also need to understand what Rodriguez is actually planning, Morgan countered. She didn't orchestrate this elaborate operation just to trigger an internal investigation. She has a specific objective. Securing the evidence, Morgan proceeded to the medical isolation unit where Rodriguez was being held. The facility protocols required full decontamination procedures before entry, though Morgan suspected they were more focused on controlling access than preventing contamination. Inside the isolation room, Rodriguez sat calmly on the edge of a medical examination table, her posture relaxed despite the armed guard visible through the observation window. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked as Morgan entered. "I found confirmation," Morgan replied, maintaining professional distance. Erebus evolved from medical research to ethnic targeting. The exposure protocols were deliberate. The question is, what's your endgame? This elaborate operation, the attack on Fort Harrison, you could have simply leaked the evidence anonymously. Rodriguez smiled slightly. Could I? Every communication channel in military and intelligence infrastructure is monitored. Every electronic transmission tracked. Anonymous whistleblowing is a fantasy in our world, Phoenix. The only way to expose this program was through direct action, creating a situation where multiple witnesses from different command structures would be forced to acknowledge what they discovered. She gestured toward the observation window. Now we have Major Blackwood's team, Colonel Vance's security personnel, and medical staff all aware that something significant has occurred. Too many witnesses to simply disappear the evidence or the whistleblowers. Morgan considered this. Tactical approach. You're creating a scenario too complex to cover up. But that still doesn't explain why you needed my blood samples from Pine Creek. You already had access to the research data on my immune response. Rodriguez's expression shifted subtly, revealing something Morgan hadn't seen before, genuine concern. Because your exposure wasn't just about developing countermeasures, Phoenix. It was about understanding long-term effects. You were the most successful test subject, developing antibodies without suffering catastrophic symptoms. The others. She hesitated. The others weren't as fortunate. What does that mean for me? Morgan asked, her medical training automatically calculating potential long-term implications. It means your genetic profile contains both the key to effective countermeasures and potentially the solution to the ethical application I originally envisioned. Rodriguez leaned forward slightly. The program directors perverted my research into weapons development, but the original medical application remains viable. Your immune response could be the template for treating genetic disorders without harmful side effects. Morgan processed this information against what she had discovered. In the research files, you're not just exposing the program. You're trying to salvage the medical research. Precisely, Rodriguez confirmed. Exposing Erebus will shut down the weapons development, as it should. But destroying all the research would eliminate potentially life-saving medical applications. I need your blood samples to preserve that potential, separate from the military application. Before Morgan could respond, the facility alarm system activated, not the containment breach protocol from earlier, but a different pattern signaling external threat. Blackwood's voice came through the communication system. Phoenix, we have a situation. Unauthorized aircraft approaching the facility perimeter. Military configuration, but not responding to identification protocols. Morgan moved to the observation window, noting the tactical display visible on security monitors in the corridor. Multiple aircraft converging on Fort Harrison from different vectors, a coordinated approach designed to overwhelm perimeter defenses. That's not my team, Rodriguez stated, joining Morgan at the window. My operation was precisely targeted, minimal personnel, surgical objectives. This is something else entirely. Morgan activated the communication link. Major, what's the approaching force composition? 6 aircraft, mixed helicopter and tilt-rotor configuration. No transponder signals. No response to security challenges. Tactical approach pattern consistent with assault formation. Morgan processed this with growing certainty. Someone else knows about Erebus. Someone with military resources and tactical capability. Rodriguez's expression reflected the same conclusion. A competing program. Or foreign intelligence that's been monitoring Erebus development. The facility's defensive protocols engaged, automated systems deploying, security personnel moving to predetermined positions. Colonel Vance's voice cut through the communications network, issuing rapid deployment orders with the confidence of someone who had prepared for this contingency. All personnel, execute Protocol Obsidian. Secure containment sectors and prepare for facility defense. This is not a drill. Morgan recognized the classification terminology. Obsidian protocols were designed for situations involving imminent capture of classified materials by hostile forces. The priority was destruction of sensitive data and materials rather than personnel safety. They're going to destroy everything, she realized aloud, including the evidence of what Erebus was really developing. Rodriguez moved with sudden urgency, retrieving something hidden within her isolation suit, a compact communication device Vance's security team had missed during their search. My team needs to move now. Whatever's happening, we can't let either the weapons research or the medical applications be destroyed. Morgan made her tactical decision, activating her secure link to Blackwood. Major, the approaching force is likely targeting Erebus research. Rodriguez has a secondary team that can secure the critical samples and data. We need to coordinate rather than engage. Blackwood's response came through a burst of static. Negative, Phoenix. Protocol Obsidian has been initiated. All materials are being prepared for emergency destruction. Colonel Vance has ordered facility lockdown. Morgan turned to Rodriguez, professional detachment giving way to tactical partnership. Your extraction plan, how comprehensive is it? 3 routes, redundant transportation, secure communications, Rodriguez replied without hesitation. Designed to evacuate essential personnel and materials under combat conditions. We need to secure 2 things, Morgan stated. Medical expertise and tactical training merging into clear objectives. The evidence of Erebus violations for whistleblower protection, and the medical research with potential legitimate applications. Everything else is secondary, Rodriguez nodded agreement. My team can be in position within 15 minutes. But we'll need to breach isolation protocols and reach the secure storage area before Obsidian procedures destroy everything. Morgan checked her tactical equipment, mind already mapping facility layout and security positions. The approaching aircraft would create the perfect distraction. Security focused outward while they moved within the facility to secure their objectives. We'll need Blackwood, Morgan decided. His team has the clearance to access secure areas without triggering additional lockdowns. Can he be trusted? Rodriguez questioned. He represents the same command structure that authorized Erebus. Morgan considered this, recalling Blackwood's provision of the secure tablet that had revealed the program's true nature. He provided me with access beyond what Vance authorized. I believe he's genuinely concerned about Erebus violations. A new alert sounded through the facility. The approaching aircraft had breached the outer defense perimeter. Time was running short before Fort Harrison would become an active combat zone. Morgan activated her communication link once more. Major Blackwood, I need your position. We have an alternative extraction plan for critical evidence before Obsidian protocols destroy everything. The response came not through the official channel, but through a secure frequency Morgan recognized from their previous operations. Blackwood bypassing monitored communications. I'm at Junction C7 near the primary storage facility. Colonel, Vance has ordered elimination of all Erebus materials. My team is officially complying while securing critical evidence samples. Your medical expertise is required for proper preservation. The coded message was clear. Blackwood was creating cover for exactly what Morgan and Rodriguez needed to accomplish. His position near the storage facility provided the access they required. Time to move, Morgan told Rodriguez, disabling the isolation room security protocols with her provisional clearance. We have one opportunity to secure both justice and something meaningful from this ethical disaster. As they prepared to exit isolation, Rodriguez paused briefly. Phoenix, you should know. Your exposure has ongoing implications. The antibodies your system developed don't just provide immunity. They've integrated with your genetic structure. You're carrying both the evidence of what they did and potentially the solution to what this research was supposed to accomplish. Morgan absorbed this medical reality with the clarity that had defined her operational approach. Then we'd better ensure that whatever happens next serves the people this program was originally meant to help, not the weapons they tried to create. Together, they moved into the facility corridors, navigating through increasing chaos as Fort Harrison prepared for imminent attack. Around them, the machinery of military response accelerated, security teams deploying, communication systems coordinating defense, destruction protocols initiating for classified materials. Morgan Hayes, who had hidden in Pine Creek for 5 years, had fully receded. Phoenix moved with tactical precision toward an objective that transcended military hierarchy and classification protocols. This wasn't about following orders or preserving secrets. This was about ensuring that justice, accountability, and legitimate medical potential survived what was coming. The approaching aircraft represented an unknown threat, but the greater danger lay in the potential destruction of evidence that could prevent such ethical violations from recurring. As alarms sounded and security barriers engaged, Phoenix led the way toward the secure storage area where Blackwood waited and where the truth about Erebus would either be preserved or lost forever in the chaos of what was rapidly becoming a battlefield. Morgan and Rodriguez navigated the facility's emergency protocols with the synchronized efficiency of operatives who shared common training. The corridors had transformed into a tactical environment, emergency lighting casting everything in deep red shadows, security barriers engaging at predetermined checkpoints, and facility personnel moving with practiced urgency toward defensive positions. Approaching forces have established jamming patterns, Rodriguez observed as their communications experienced intermittent disruption. Military-grade electronic countermeasures. Whoever they are, they're well equipped. Morgan analyzed their tactical situation while maintaining forward momentum. 7 minutes until we reach Blackwood's position. If facility defenses follow standard protocols, we have approximately 12 minutes before Obsidian procedures initiate irreversible destruction sequences. They encountered a security checkpoint where 2 armed personnel maintained position despite the facility-wide mobilization. Morgan approached openly, her provisional clearance displayed on her tactical identifier. Captain Hayes, Medical Division, she stated with the calm authority that had once commanded field operations. Priority escort of essential personnel. To secure containment area on Colonel Vance's direct authorization. The senior security officer verified her credentials with professional efficiency, while maintaining tactical awareness of Rodriguez. System shows you're authorized for medical isolation supervision only, Captain. Facility is under lockdown protocol. Morgan didn't hesitate. Override authorization Delta 7 Echo. Verification code 3479 Sparrow. Emergency Medical Response Team for Biological Containment. The code sequence wasn't standard procedure. It was a specialized override Blackwood had established during their approach to Fort Harrison, designed specifically for this contingency. The security officer checked his tactical display, where Blackwood's authorization appeared with command-level priority. Verified, he acknowledged, stepping aside to allow passage. Take direct route through Sections C. Sections A and B are being evacuated for defensive positioning. As they cleared the checkpoint, Rodriguez gave Morgan an appraising look. Blackwood established override protocols before we even arrived. He's been planning this contingency longer than he indicated. Standard operating procedure for Special Operations Command when investigating potential ethical breaches, Morgan replied. Though the implication was clear, Blackwood had anticipated needing to secure evidence outside normal channels from the beginning. They progressed deeper into the facility, where the distant sounds of perimeter defense systems engaging became audible. Heavy weapons fire, and the distinctive concussion of tactical deployment. The approaching force had made contact with Fort Harrison's outer defenses. What do they want? Morgan questioned as they moved. The same research we're trying to secure. Possibly, Rodriguez acknowledged, though their approach lacks surgical precision. This is overwhelming force, not targeted extraction. They reached Junction C7, where Blackwood waited with 2 members of his tactical team. The storage facility entrance behind them had been secured with additional protective measures, beyond standard protocols. Situation report, Morgan requested as they approached. Attacking force has breached outer defenses, Blackwood confirmed. 6 aircraft deploying approximately 40 combat personnel with heavy tactical equipment. No identifying markings, but movement patterns suggest private military contractors rather than state actors. Mercenaries, Rodriguez translated, with military-grade equipment and tactical training. Exactly, Blackwood agreed. They've targeted communications arrays first, then weapon systems. They're isolating the facility while maintaining the structural integrity of key research areas. They want Erebus intact, Morgan concluded, the tactical objective becoming clear. Blackwood nodded grimly. Colonel Vance has initiated Obsidian Protocol with a 10-minute countdown. All research materials will be destroyed through controlled incineration. He's operating under the assumption that the attacking force is attempting to secure biological weapons. We need to preserve the evidence of program violations and the legitimate medical research, Morgan stated, bringing them back to their primary objective. Without those, there's no accountability and no potential benefit from this ethical disaster. Blackwood gestured to the secured storage facility. My team has prepared transport containment for critical samples and data cores. We have 7 minutes to secure what matters and reach the emergency evacuation point before Obsidian Protocols lock down all exit routes. Inside the storage facility, Blackwood's team had already identified and isolated the essential materials: biological samples and specialized containment units, research data cores with original development protocols and documentation of the program's ethical violations. Everything had been prepared for rapid evacuation. We've secured the evidence required for whistleblower protection, Blackwood confirmed. Dr. Rodriguez, you'll need to verify we've captured the essential medical research components as well. Rodriguez moved with professional efficiency through the prepared materials, identifying critical samples and research data. These contain the original therapeutic applications, she confirmed, securing specialized containment units. With these we can preserve the legitimate medical potential, while exposing the weapons development violations. An explosion rocked the facility, much closer than the perimeter defenses. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. They have breached the main research wing, Blackwood reported, checking his security feed. 2 tactical teams moving directly toward central containment. They know exactly what they are looking for. How? Morgan questioned. Erebus is classified beyond standard military protocols. Even targeting the facility indicates inside knowledge. Blackwood's expression hardened. Colonel Vance is no longer responding on command channels. Last communication was him entering the secure server room alone. The implication was immediate and chilling. He is either destroying evidence that implicates higher command structures, or he is the source of the information that led to this attack. Rodriguez finished. Erebus has become a liability to someone with enough resources to eliminate it completely. Another explosion closer still. The facility shuttered, emergency systems cycling as backup power engaged. The Obsidian Protocol countdown accelerated on Blackwood's tactical display, 5 minutes remaining before automated destruction sequences initiated. Change of plans. Blackwood decided securing the transport containers. Standard evacuation routes will be compromised if attacking forces have facility layouts. We need an alternative exit strategy. Morgan accessed the tactical display, analyzing the facility schematic with the expertise of someone trained to identify extraction routes in hostile environments. Maintenance Tunnel Network Section D9. It connects to the emergency water reservoir. System. Designed for facility cooling systems but large enough for personnel movement. That system will be flooded during Obsidian protocols, Rodriguez noted. Part of the containment fire suppression sequence. Not if we reroute the emergency systems first, Morgan countered, already moving toward the environmental control access point. Within the storage facility. These systems were designed with redundancies to prevent accidental containment breaches. We can redirect the protocols to prioritize the primary research wing while leaving maintenance tunnels operational. While Blackwood's team secured the critical materials for transport, Morgan accessed the environmental systems with her medical override credentials. The facility had been designed to contain biological threats through multiple redundant systems. But those same design elements created exploitable pathways for someone with proper authorization. Rerouting containment protocols, she confirmed, her fingers moving across the control interface with practiced precision. Primary suppression systems now prioritizing research wing only. Maintenance tunnels will remain operational for approximately 12 minutes before secondary containment engages. Blackwood distributed the secure transport containers among his team. That gives us a narrow extraction window. Once we clear the facility perimeter, Dr. Rodriguez's team will rendezvous at these coordinates. He transferred the location data to their tactical systems. From there we separate into multiple transport groups to ensure the evidence reaches secure channels regardless of individual interception. The tactical approach was standard special operations procedure for high-value intelligence extraction. Redundancy ensuring mission success even if individual operators were compromised. It reflected Blackwood's training and commitment to preserving the evidence they had secured. A proximity alert activated on their tactical displays, hostile forces approaching their position from 2 directions. The attacking team had identified the storage facility as a primary objective. Time to move, Blackwood ordered, leading them toward the maintenance access point Morgan had identified. Defensive positions only if engaged. Priority is securing the materials, not eliminating hostiles. They moved through the facility with tactical discipline, Morgan and Rodriguez integrating seamlessly with Blackwood's team despite their complex history. Years of shared training created an operational synchronicity that transcended their divergent paths since Operation Ares. As they approached the maintenance tunnel access point, the first direct engagement occurred. 2 combat operators in unmarked tactical gear appearing at the corridor junction ahead. Their equipment confirmed Rodriguez's assessment: private, military contractors with advanced weaponry and professional training. Morgan assessed the tactical situation in microseconds. The operators had not expected to encounter resistance at this position. Their weapons were not raised in immediate threat posture. She moved before conscious thought completed, muscle memory from years of combat training taking over. Her first strike disabled the lead operator's weapon, followed by a precision technique that rendered him unconscious without permanent injury. Beside her, Blackwood neutralized the second operator with similar efficiency. The entire engagement lasted less than 4 seconds, silent, controlled, and with minimal force. Non-military contractors, Morgan confirmed, noting tactical details as Blackwood's team secured the unconscious operators. Advanced equipment but standard private security training protocols. These are not special forces, which means they likely do not know the facility layout as well as they should, Blackwood concluded. They are following objectives from someone with inside knowledge but lack complete operational awareness. They reached the maintenance access point as facility alarms shifted to a new pattern: Obsidian protocols entering final phase. Emergency lighting pulsed with increased urgency, and automated announcements indicated imminent containment procedures. The maintenance tunnel stretched before them, a utilitarian passage designed for equipment access rather than personnel movement. Water lines and electrical conduits ran along the walls, feeding the facility's environmental systems. At its end, nearly 800 meters away, lay the emergency reservoir connection and their potential escape route. 4 minutes until secondary containment, engages Morgan informed the team as they entered the tunnel. Maintain tactical spacing and priority movement protocols. They proceeded through the tunnel with disciplined urgency. Blackwood's team alternating security positions while maintaining forward momentum. The sounds of the facility battle receded behind them, replaced by the mechanical hum of environmental systems and the distant rumble of automated containment procedures engaging throughout the research wing. 3 minutes into their passage facility, systems surged around them, power fluctuations causing the emergency lighting to flicker momentarily before stabilizing. The tactical displays on their equipment registered electromagnetic disturbance consistent with high-energy systems activation. They have initiated something in the primary research wing. Rodriguez observed, checking the readings on her specialized equipment. Energy signature consistent with targeted electromagnetic pulse. They are trying to destroy electronic data without damaging biological samples. Smart approach, Blackwood acknowledged. Eliminates digital evidence while preserving physical materials for extraction. Morgan's tactical assessment accelerated, which means they are not here to destroy Erebus research. They are here to secure it, probably for continuation elsewhere, under different authorization. The implications clarified their mission's importance. They were not just preserving evidence of ethical violations and legitimate medical applications, they were preventing the weaponized research from being transferred to potentially even less constrained operational parameters. As they approached the reservoir connection, Blackwood's tactical display indicated communication restoration. They had cleared the facility's jamming perimeter. He established connection with his external security team, confirming extraction coordinates and transport availability. Dr. Rodriguez, your team's status, he questioned as they prepared to exit the maintenance tunnel. Rodriguez activated her secure communication device, receiving confirmation signals before responding. In position at rendezvous coordinates. No hostile engagement detected. Transport secured and prepared for immediate departure. The reservoir connection appeared ahead, a reinforced access point designed to control water flow between the facilities, cooling systems, and the external reservoir that supplied them. During normal operations, the connection remained sealed, but emergency protocols included automated release mechanisms to prevent catastrophic pressure buildup during containment procedures. Morgan accessed the control panel, overriding safety interlocks with her provisional authorization. Initiating controlled decompression sequence. Prepare for water displacement and rapid pressure equalization. The team secured their equipment and braced against the tunnel walls as Morgan activated the release sequence. The access point opened in controlled stages, allowing pressurized water to flow outward in a managed decompression rather than explosive release. Within 40 seconds, water levels equalized, creating a navigable passage to the external reservoir service tunnel. Clear, Morgan confirmed, leading them through the access point into the larger reservoir tunnel beyond. The air was cooler, here heavy with moisture and the earthy scent of the surrounding watershed. Unlike the facility's sterile environment, this space felt connected to the Montana landscape above, a transition point between the classified world they were leaving and the natural environment beyond. They moved through the reservoir tunnel with continued tactical discipline, though the immediate threat had diminished. Facility sensors could not track their movement here, and the attacking force would be focused on the primary research areas rather than maintenance systems. After approximately 500 meters, they reached the service exit, a reinforced access point leading to a maintenance building disguised as standard watershed infrastructure. Blackwood's external team had secured the perimeter, establishing a defensive position that allowed safe extraction without revealing their presence to the ongoing battle at the main facility. As they emerged into the Montana evening, Morgan assessed their tactical situation with practiced efficiency. The facility battle continued in the distance weapons fire and tactical movement, visible through specialized equipment. The attacking force had established perimeter control while continuing operations within the primary research wing. Transport secured Blackwood confirmed as his team loaded the containment materials into specialized vehicles designed for inconspicuous movement. We will divide into 3 separate groups, each with essential evidence components. Rendezvous at secure location, Echo for evidence compilation and official documentation. Rodriguez contacted her team coordinating parallel movement with the medical research materials they had secured. Phoenix, you need to go with the primary biological samples. Your medical expertise is essential for proper preservation, and she hesitated briefly. Your blood work may be necessary for stabilizing certain components during transport. Morgan understood. The implication her unique antibody profile remained integral to both the weaponized research and its potential legitimate applications. She was not just carrying evidence, she was part of it. Agreed, she acknowledged. I will accompany the primary biological containment. Major Blackwood should escort the documentation evidence through separate channels to ensure whistleblower protections are properly established. Blackwood nodded confirmation. My team has direct access to Inspector General protocols outside standard military channels. Once documented, this evidence cannot be classified retroactively or hidden through national security exemptions. As the teams prepared for departure, Morgan stepped aside briefly with Rodriguez, establishing private communication away from the tactical operations. What happens after we secure the evidence? She questioned directly. The weapons research is exposed. The medical applications preserved. What is your next objective? Rodriguez studied her former colleague with measured assessment. Accountability, not just for Erebus, but for the broader pattern of ethical violations in classified research. This is not isolated, Phoenix. There are other programs operating beyond oversight using similar justifications. And the medical applications, Morgan pressed. The legitimate research that could help people. That depends on you, Rodriguez replied honestly. Your antibody profile remains the template for effective applications without harmful side effects. The research can proceed ethically, but only with your informed consent and ongoing involvement. Morgan absorbed this reality, the choice she now faced after years of having her agency stripped away through classified manipulation. You orchestrated this entire scenario to force that choice, did not you? Not just exposing Erebus, but bringing me back into operational awareness. Rodriguez did not deny it. You deserve to know the truth about what happened to you, about what they turned you into without your knowledge. And you deserve the choice about what happens with that reality moving forward. Before Morgan could respond, Blackwood approached with urgent tactical updates. Attacking forces withdrawing from the facility. They have secured something from the primary research wing and are executing rapid extraction. We need to move immediately before they establish aerial search patterns. The tactical teams divided according to plan, separating into multiple vehicles with distinct departure routes. Morgan accompanied the biological materials in a specially equipped medical transport disguised as a standard commercial vehicle. As they departed the reservoir site, she observed the Montana landscape with renewed tactical awareness, noting defensible positions, monitoring potential surveillance vectors, assessing civilian traffic patterns for anomalies. Phoenix had fully re-emerged. Her operational instincts integrating with Morgan Hayes' medical expertise to create something neither identity could have achieved alone. The nurse who had hidden in Pine Creek had possessed the knowledge to understand Erebus research implications. The special operations officer had the tactical skills to secure that knowledge against those who would misuse it. Together they created something new and operative, with both the understanding and the ability to ensure that what happened next served humanity rather than threatened it. As their vehicle navigated rural Montana roads toward the secure rendezvous point, Morgan reviewed the biological samples they had secured. The containment units held both evidence of weapons development and the foundation for legitimate medical applications, the potential to target genetic disorders with precision previously unimaginable. Her mind cataloged the possibilities with clinical precision, treatments for genetic conditions that had previously been untreatable, delivery systems that could repair damaged DNA without harmful side effects, applications that could eliminate suffering for countless patients. All of it built on research that had begun with ethical intentions before military applications corrupted its purpose. All of it dependent on her unique biological profile, the unexpected result of an exposure that had been calculated rather than accidental. The tactical communication system activated Blackwood's voice coming through secure channels. Primary evidence secured at Checkpoint Echo. Documentation protocols initiated through Inspector General channels. Whistleblower protections established and verified. The first objective achieved accountability for those who had perverted medical research into weapons development. The system that had used Morgan and others as unwitting test subjects would face investigation and consequences. Rodriguez's team confirmed parallel success, the medical research components secured and stabilized for preservation. The legitimate applications would not be lost in the investigation of ethical violations. As they approached the secure rendezvous point, Morgan made her decision. The choice Rodriguez had engineered this entire operation to present was ultimately simple, despite its complex implications. She could retreat back into anonymity, leaving others to determine how her unique biological profile would be utilized. Or she could step forward, maintaining control over research that quite literally contained parts of herself. The rendezvous location appeared ahead a private research facility disguised as an agricultural monitoring station. Rodriguez's contacts had secured it through channels separate from military oversight, creating a neutral ground where the evidence could be compiled and preserved beyond interference. As their vehicle passed through security protocols and entered the facility perimeter, Morgan Hayes, nurse special operations, officer unwitting test subject, and now fully informed agent of her own destiny, prepared to ensure that what had been done to her without consent would transform into something she chose to create with full awareness. Phoenix would rise from these ashes not as a weapon but as a healer, not as a victim but as the architect of what came next. The fire that had forged her against her will would now fuel a transformation of her own design. Inside the facility, Rodriguez and Blackwood waited with their respective teams the secured evidence, assembled for proper documentation and preservation. As Morgan entered carrying the biological materials that contained both the darkness of what had been done and the potential light of what could be created, she recognized the pivotal moment for what it was not an ending but a beginning. The small-town nurse who had hidden from her past had completed her journey. Phoenix had returned from the shadows. Now Morgan Hayes would integrate both identities into something stronger than either could have been alone and ensure that the fire that had nearly consumed her would instead illuminate a path forward for others who suffered. The battle for Fort Harrison had ended. The fight for accountability and ethical application was just beginning. And this time Morgan Hayes would face it with full awareness, informed consent, and the unshakable determination of someone who had survived the worst that classified manipulation could inflict. Whatever came next would be her choice, her mission, her redemption. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.